recording permission from the meeting host.
Okay, I'm recording now. Okay.
Okay, that's fine.
Yeah.
We might not need it, but anyway.
No. Well, it's more a case of you know, kind of, and it will be useful because there'll be, you know, other stuff. So I'll get it on my screen. Damn. I'll do it on this. Hang on. Right, it's okay. Can you see that? Is that?
Yep.
Yeah. Okay. Fine. So let me start with a an overview of the way everything hangs together. Yeah, because I think this is fairly crucial for you to understand, and maybe not all of you do. So let me just move these out of the way. Hang on. So at the moment, does it show my? Can you see that?
Yeah.
Can you see my sprite on the screen? Does that show up here? So what we have, the way it works at the moment, and we're going to be expanding this, we have a list of loads and loads of news websites, and Stan will probably know better than I do actually how many we've got. You know, there's a few thousand of them anyway, and each of these websites have what we call RSS feeds. So an RSS feed, RSS. Does anybody remember what it stands for?
Syndication.
Yeah, there you go, Stan. You. So
Say again.
Really simple syndication.
Oh, right. Yeah.
Yeah. And the reason the RSS feeds come as like a standard issue on most content management systems that all websites are based on. So, you know, it comes, I think the guy who invented it in the first place actually killed himself for some reason, you know, but anyway, he died prematurely, but that was going back kind of, you know, a long time. And so the way we use it is these USS feeds. So basically these feeds that we get included in the program, you can ask these feeds all the time. You can give it a date and say, have you got any new web pages you've done past this date, and then it will supply a list of them, a list of new web pages in RSS format. So we have these things. So we have all these in the Postgres database, which is down here. That holds the details of all the websites that we've got and what their RSS feeds are. And they're all categorized. So we categorize them all by what we call feed categories. So they're all categorized. And these pollers, and there's lots of them up here, these are little programs that whiz around in the backgrounds, and they run regularly all the time, asking each one of these RSS feeds, have you got anything new? Have you got anything new? Have you got anything new? Oh, you've got something new. Give me that new thing. And then the poller then looks at that data, which is effectively each one of these things is going to be a news story or a feed item. So that's why we've got the name. That's where the name feed item comes from. We have the feeds, which is the RSS feed, and then the feed items are the stories that's in it. So what the poller then does, it then processes them, and what it means by that is it then says it examines what's in that news article and sees if there's anything in there that the apps are going to are polling for, or searched for. So if we use, I tend to always use the example of Liverpool Football Club, and Category 5, which is soccer, you know, because it's the one I was going to remember. And it's so the feeds themselves are all categorized. So the RSS feeds are categorized. And I'm going to discuss in a bit more detail about the way they're categorized, but it's very, very important to understand. To be able to understand how the feed items works, you need to understand the feed categorization. Stan has the advantage on you here because he kind of knows this. So apologies for Stan, because I know I'm teaching my grandmother to suck eggs in your case, but Eamon and Rach won't. So they know what feed the category is. So they might go to the Liverpool Echo as one of the news sites, and one of their feeds might be for football, which is soccer, which is 5, and in there'll be loads of news stories all about football. And what it's looking for is a news story that contains the word Liverpool in it. And if it does, then what it does, it says, "Oh, I'll find a news story about Liverpool." What it then does, what the poller then does, is it then, amongst other things as well, it then puts this feed item into Elasticsearch, into the feed items index, and it also then I'll click onto the next bit.
Could I just ask a question?
Yep.
When you say that the pollers, that they go, they keep going around asking if they've got any more information, any new information, and if something new comes up, it won't be looking for Liverpool, will it? It'll just be looking for anything new.
No, the pollers, yeah. So the pollers look for. So yes, it's important. So it's looking for, say, have you got any new? So it gets a load of new news articles, and then they look at each of the individual news article in detail. It processes, loops through every one of the list of news articles and see if it matches any of the known searches that we have.
Right.
And it finds the known search of Liverpool for feed category 5, soccer. Yeah. And then so it needs to. So what the poller is doing with this, it gets a bare bones information about this. It's got the details of of what the URL of the news story is, what's contained in the news story. In other words, what's the text in the news story for the body of it, what the title of the news story is, and other bits and pieces. And it needs to embellish that feed item with other things. And it's looking for, because we have a list of known searches. So this is the list of known searches, which is another index in Elasticsearch called known searches, is that these are all the things that we know people have searched for. Yeah. And so it's all...
Sorry, is it possible that one article can fit into more than one category?
Absolutely. Okay. So there'll be loads, yeah. So and that's usually the case. So a news article so obviously if you can think of if Liverpool are playing Tottenham, there'll be, there'll be, immediately you've got two there. There'll be people who've searched for Tottenham and people who've searched for Liverpool. We need it. So each news story could have many different match many different searches. Yeah.
Yeah, good.
So the poller, the other thing it does, as well as adding the stuff to Elasticsearch, having embellished it, added it into feed items, the other thing it does, it also has to look over here, has to send out notifications. So, and again, it's important to understand notifications. So notifications don't go out of the main system. We send them over to this other outfit called pusher.com. So we send a message to pusher.com. So, and they manage the notifications. So notifications are a completely different way of communicating with an app. So apps normally they normally communicate with their servers by saying just directly. But for what we call push notifications, so in other words, the app will say, you know, have you got any information? And you know, have you got any information? If the app was continually asking our servers, have you got anything? Have you got any information? It would hammer the batteries, and the batteries would run flat in no time at all. So it's an inefficient way of you don't want the app all the time asking, because the app, when it's doing nothing, won't use any battery. So we have to use a completely different technique for sending notifications out, and that's why we use pusher.com, which is, you know, kind of software as a service.
Sorry, can I just ask, you know, this
Yeah.
pusher.com,
Mm.
it's like, in the long term,
Mm.
would you be sticking with them, or would you be looking at kind of
No, we'll be sticking with them. We'll be sticking with them. Yeah. So pusher.com, you know, it took us, we didn't use pusher.com in the early days. We used Google Firebase, and you know, Google Firebase was you know, kind of, so they had a service. Firebase was a separate company that Google bought for doing push notifications. There aren't many people who can do it. It's a very specialist skill. And since Google bought them out, there were disasters. We couldn't get any tech support. So if it doesn't work, if your notifications don't work, it's disastrous. I can't emphasize that enough. Again, Stan will be aware of this already, but and let me give you an example. We had an early brand of one of our news apps called Football Flash, which we promoted ourselves. Still exists, that just focused on football. And we spent a lot of money promoting it, you know, kind of tens of thousands promoting it. And we got about 180,000 installs of it. And then over the weekend, this is when we're using Firebase, the notifications stopped working. And over that weekend, 80% of the people who installed Football Flash uninstalled it, because they thought, we're not getting any notifications, it's not working. Now, it was working, they just weren't getting notifications. So the other thing is to be aware of, notifications are really, really important. So we took a long time, you know, to try and find another company that could do this, that could give us technical support, and we could do it reliable. So in other words, when it goes wrong, we can phone somebody up and say, please fix. And so pusher.com, I managed to find them. So that's all they do, notifications. They're just experts at it.
Oh,
and they
can
do
you
it.
expand on that, Steve, about they do notifications? What does that mean?
Well, that's all they do. They do notifications for other companies. So they just send out mobile notifications, nothing else.
Saying what?
Well, you tell them what you're going to say. You know, so somebody's got an app and I'll say, I need notifications. You tell them these are the notifications you push out to them. Yeah.
So when the Guardian says I've got a breaking news story on my phone,
yeah,
that's
they may well be using pusher.com. I know one of the clients they use is Tesla. I think they also Uber as well. I think they use. So we're perfectly happy with them. You know, we found them fantastic on customer support. They've helped us do the integration. They're really good. So the point I'm making here is that the pollers have to send a message to Pusher to say this is a notification. So if anybody's got notifications turned on for Liverpool and for Tottenham, then they need messages sent to their phone to say, hey, you've got a new message about Liverpool. Hey, you've got a new message about Tottenham. Yeah. So and that's important as well, because you know, it's one of the reasons why the feed items table has the data the way it's structured, which I'll come on to. So the thing is about the way the apps the apps have to ask Pusher to say, I would like to be notified about this event. So inside the app, so where they're programmed, they actually send a message to pusher.com saying, I'd like to be told about when there's a new message about football related information for Liverpool or for Tottenham. And what it's called is that process is called subscription to a topic. So genetically, pusher.com has this notion of topics, and it's just a string of characters. It can be anything, yeah. But the important thing about it, there's two things that are important about it. What's not allowed into it is special characters, including space. So there can't be. And the other thing to remember about it is it's case sensitive. So the subscription topic must be consistent. So we've made them all uppercase, and we've encoded all the characters in it as well. And the way we've done the encoding is we do it ourselves. Is we convert any special characters into the ASCII equivalent, which I kind of explained to Rachel yesterday what ASCII was. And the ASCII for space is 32, and we put a hyphen either side of it. So that's kind of important to be, it's important to kind of understand that. That'll become apparent when we look at more detail on how the feed items are structured. So that should give you a kind of useful overview of really what we're doing here, the way it kind of works. So the app's also kind of, as well as getting notifications over here from Pusher, they're also then getting information from, or passing information to and from, APIs on our servers. So and we won't go into the detail there because it doesn't really matter. And those APIs, some of those will also pick information up from the Elasticsearch indexes as well and pass the information back. So in the case, for example, where which is fairly common, is one of the common APIs that they call is get new messages. So irrelevant of whether they've got notifications, the get new messages APIs, which the apps will call, the API will go to Elasticsearch and pull out the latest news story for all the searches that you've that the app has subscribed to. So it might have got, whatever they may be. So if we kind of move on to the and also I forgot that there's also the we also have to remember as well, actually, as well as news messages, there are also messages coming from the influencers. So these apps, most of these apps that we're going to be putting out are all going to be branded by an influencer. So we've got one already that's out there, which is called Just Have a Think by this chap, Dave Borlace. He's our first influencer that was signed up. But the plan is that we'll have hundreds of influencers. And the reason why we do this is because we've learned the hard way that people are very fussy about downloading an app from somebody they've never heard of. And we've kind of discovered that for a lot of complex social reasons and distrust of the internet generally, is that people have a strong trust relationship with influencers that they follow. So if an influencer has their own app and they say to their followers, I would like you to download this app, they'll do it. So what does the influencer get out of it? The influencer gets out a direct channel to all their followers. And as well as sending, so normally an influencer will have YouTube channel, and he'll do podcasts, and he'll have a website, and he'll sort of send this stuff out randomly to his followers. Here they get a place where it's all in one place. So as well as we have this notion of news channels, which are based on news stories that we go out and find, we also have this notion of influencers where they push out their own stories all the time, which go directly there. They also go into these influencer news, if you like, links or news stories, also go into the feed items index as well. So they have a console, they log in, and they've said, I've just done a new YouTube video. They'll put the YouTube video in there, press the button, and that will go out to their apps. They'll get a notification for it, and then they'll say, Just Have a Think, I've just got a new video, or I've just done a podcast. That'll go into a different channel. So that's generally how it works. It's sort of so it's very, very important that you have that kind of overview of how the whole thing's working. So,
how do you distinguish between influencer content and general news?
well, so all the stuff in feed items is all they'll well. There's a number of different ways, Eamon. It's a good question. Is one of them is they so part of there's embellished data that we add onto the feed items, which is things like where did it come from, what's the publisher, yeah.
Oh yeah.
So what's the publisher? So what we do with the influencers is they have their own publisher name. You know, we
Right.
set them up as a separate publisher, so we know that.
Yeah.
But we also flag them up as being influencers as well.
Okay.
Yeah. So on each of the influencers have their own brand ID as well. Although it's not kind of that's not relevant to the feed index, but they do have their own brand ID. So but the principal way in feed items, the way we know it's an influencer, is the publisher it comes from. So they have their own publication, and those publishers, that publication will be flagged as an influencer publication. You know, we have a flag on there to say this is an influencer. Yeah.
Yeah.
So right, okay. So we now move on to the kind of next slide. Right, okay. So as I say, I'll come back to this thing about feed categories because it's absolutely essential. So so feed categories. If we can remember, we had the on those blocks of things, we have the Postgres data, which contains our reference data. So this is not Elasticsearch database. It's an old school relational database, a little bit like Access, and that's got all this like reference data. And part of the reference data is feed categories. So feed categories are broken into parent and child feed categories. And if you go back to what I was saying before, we know that each feed has to be assigned a category. And and I've got some examples here. So there's we've got news, which is and they've all got a unique identity identifier, which is numeric, but it doesn't necessarily mean that they're linked that way. So the numbers aren't necessarily sequential. So with news, we've got a parent category of news, and we've got a group of child categories in there. With different IDs: US news, UK news, blah 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 blah. Similarly with sport, which is parent category of 2, and we've got subcategories of it. We also have, if you like, a super category, which is called all sources, which is -1. And what that means is everything that's so irrelevant, all the parents, all the children, everything, the whole thing. And this is an important thing in how we do the searches. So when we do the searches of the database, the search at the moment, the way it operates, is it has to be the combination of a feed category and the keywords, the match keywords that we're searching for. So so it's using sort of keywords that are stuck together. So Manchester United, for instance, would be right. Okay, I'm going to look through the article and I see if we get the 2 words stuck together, Manchester United, Manchester space United. It's not just Manchester somewhere and United somewhere. They have to be next to each other. So it's a very, very crude way of searching, the way we do it at the moment. And the way the feed items are stored, or the way the search is associated with our feed items includes that combination. So of feed category name and the search keywords. So that's critical. And this is one of the key areas where as the search analytics team, you'll be expanding this to be far more sophisticated. So rather than just keywords, we're going to be, they're going to be corresponding kind of Elasticsearch queries to make it more sophisticated. And there'll be different scenarios for these particular type of searches you're going to do. And that's really the thing you're going to be doing. That's going to be your raison d'etre. That's what you're about. And so we'll need to expand exactly what a search is and the way it's stored in the database, and and the way the notifications go out as well. So at the moment, what we do, we have this concept, which I'll cover in a little bit, of kind of what we call a search index, which another thing is, what is it that's a unique search? And at the moment, that search index is just a combination of feed category name plus the keywords, all taken to uppercase and all encoded as well. So,
a quick question.
Yeah.
Feed categories, is there just 2 levels, parent and child?
Parent and child, and -1, which is everything. Yeah. So there's only those levels. Yeah. I think, it is, these are like kind of fundamental things that you have to kind of know, really. So it'll just help you, understand the whole thing from end to end, really, how it's working. Right, okay. So as I've covered before, the encoding the feed category names. So pushit.com doesn't allow spaces or other special characters, so they have to be encoded. We do our own encoding with this. URLs are another thing that you use to do encoding. That's always been the case. Sometimes you see URLs and it's got like percentage signs in it with numbers. So you get a URL link and you see all these funny characters in it. So it'll say percentage 20% in it. So that's the same way we're doing it. So percentage 20% in a URL means space, but against URL can't have spaces in them. So that's why it pads it out with all those. So we've got an example here that a couple of examples here was so US news become US-32-news, rugby union. Actually, that's wrong.
This is a specific bubbler thing. This is the decision.
This is a specific bubbly thing. That rugby union one should be -32 union, but so there's a mistake there. I'll have to edit that.
Oh right, yeah, that should have a 32 in it. Oh, you do.
So, that's better. So so there we go. Right, okay. So so that's kind of important to know. So the document databases have to be what we call embellished. So that means we have to, in a relational database, you have links to various different tables. So you're trying to avoid having duplicates in there and duplicate content and too much content there. But with document databases, with Elasticsearch is, you have to embellish it with everything you know about it. And the reason for that is it's not easy to link it to other things. So when you're doing searching for it, you need to find everything that you're going to search or filter or query needs to be inside the feed items. So the embellished attributes include the publication ID and name, the news provider ID and name. So what news provider is with some publications are all owned by one news provider. So we can give the example of Reach PLC, which owns nearly all the local newspapers, owns the Daily Mirror, and it also owns nearly all the local newspapers like Manchester Evening News, Liverpool Echo. What's the Newcastle one, right?
Newcastle Chronicle,
Yeah, it owns all them. Yeah, so they'd have a news provider name of Reach PLC, and then they'd all have publication names as well, because these things will all be relevant things you will need to search on and maybe check on in the future as well. So be aware of the fact that there's a ton of extra stuff in there. If in doubt, we put it in there. We add it in. That's always a theory for working with document databases. Right, this is when I end up. I run out of time, and Leo phoned me up. So, So the other thing we have within the feed items, so I'll have to finish this off now. This was going to be the last couple of pages. Is we have arrays of other things in there within feed items. So I'm pointing out here, we've got the search index array is the first one. So let us move on quickly to the actual index itself. So if we get so I'm in. Let me just share this now. So here I'm in Discovery. I'll just refresh this. Hang on. So I'm in the staging website. I've got, in the last 15 minutes we've had 128 new feed items been added. Yeah. Showing you that, and this is the feed items index. So there's like a number of different indexes here, and the one you will use most of all is feed items, but there's others you're gonna have to know about as well. So, but in terms of playing around with things, this is the thing you're going to be looking for. And the reason why you're going to be looking for feed items is because you're going to be looking at refining your searches, how these searches can get better. And so the principal index you'll be using for that is going to be feed items. So if we now look at so what I can do for this. So this is the so here we've got a feed item. So there's some standard stuff at the top here, which you'll need to know about. But this stuff is just generated by Elasticsearch itself. So it's got the index name, the doc. The type is always -doc. That's a kind of legacy thing. In the past, there used to be other types. Now the only thing they have are docs. Each document has a unique ID, which is useful to know. It's got a unique ID that it gets generated by Elasticsearch for it. It doesn't have to be. You can actually define an index and give your own attributes, but they have to be unique. It's got to be unique. So for this, it's got a version number. Again, this is standard. So whenever you do with Elasticsearch, with any of these databases, nothing ever gets deleted. Or even when you update something, it doesn't actually update it. What it does is it just brings you a new version of it. So if this document was to be updated, what you would see when you're searching would be like version 2 of it. The old stuff always exists, and that's fairly important as well. Nothing ever really gets deleted, but whenever you're doing searches, it'll just get you the latest versions. And it repeats the document ID here, so you can actually access it, which is quite handy. So sometimes you need to do these things up here aren't easy to search for. This score thing, by the way, is what the score is a that's when you're doing searches and it comes up with a relevance value to it, which you haven't done this. I've just said give us everything in the give us everything in the index. If you to do a query, it can give you a score, which is like kind of how relevant the story is. Which, if you can think back to the Udemy course, when it comes to when it mentions relevance in that as the way it calculates it, I always forget it. Was it TF over IDF or something? So it's not relevant here because we're not doing a search. We're just saying give us the latest. So there's no search words in there. And this is again where Elasticsearch comes through. So now we get to the kind of the nub of it. So we've got a document ID. I don't know why we've got it duplicated there. There was probably a good reason at the time. So the title is important. So this is the title of the news story. Yeah. So that is something you would be searching for. And here's a good example where you may, you know, there are certain cases where you might want to say, well, in terms of relevance, one of the things you might say is, well, if the thing I'm searching for is in, so when we, at the moment, the way it works, it just searches 2 bits. It searches title and it searches the body text if it can find stuff. And one of the areas, easy ways you can improve relevance is say, well, if it's in the title, the thing I'm searching for, then make that more relevant. And you can actually do that within your queries. You can say, if it's in the title, I want it to be more relevant. Now we also, so this is the way it appears in the actual document, the original, which is a mix of uppercase and lowercase. So we also have this thing called title lower, where everything's lower. Like generally speaking, the way we match things when we're searching is previously the way we've done it. We've always done it just on lowercase. So so we've got title lower, descriptions, nothing in there. This is the link. So in other words, this is the actual, this link is the URL of the story that's going to get shown inside the app. If we, you know, if we took this here now, for instance, and copy and pasted that, there's the story, you know. So, right, okay. The article hash, we needn't talk about that at the moment. That's a I'll not include that here now. We will need to talk about hashes later on, but not right now. You'll have enough to take in with all this lot. Yeah.
That's identical to the ID, Steve, and the doc ID.
The hash.
The article hashes, yeah.
Oh, it is. It is actually. Yeah, it is. It's there are other hashes that we use in here. So it is the same. So basically, we generated this as being basic. Yeah. So let's not talk about hashes now. We don't want to go down that rabbit hole. We'll never get anything done.
Okay.
So the title of the feed. So this is, you know, it's important to remember the difference between the feed and the articles and the feed items. So the feed is the RSS feed, whereas, you know, what we've got here is the stories that we get out of that feed. So this is, it happens to have a title. Okay, publication ID, publication name, publication. This is embellished stuff. So the URL for the publication, which again is useful for the apps because they can use that. So when it gets showed, you can have a thumbnail image of what it looks like. Country code, news provider, which Trinity Minute Group is actually kind of, that was the previous name for Reach PLC and should be updated. Feed category name, you can see it's uppercased. Feed category ID, which is 5, soccer, which we talked about before. The pardon category name, which is uppercased. Pardon category ID, which is 2. HTTP status. So HTTP status, which is that's probably another thing you're probably not relevant now, Rachel. But whenever you do an HTTP request, it always comes back with a status. 200 is good. That's fine. So if there's anything wrong with it, if it says like 404, that means the page not found. If it said 403, it means you know, you don't have permissions to view this page. So we hope most of the stories in here just have 200 in there. So then we get to the important bit, which is body text. Now here's the original body text. It's changed all that. It's interesting. So this is like uppercase and lowercase. Notice also in here as well, it's got these sort of things in here. \n/n, which is so \n/n is a bit like encoding again, but what that represents is just line feeds. So in other words, you know, kind of you've hit return on the end of it. So there's special characters it's got built into it. Probably you're not going to be bothered about those. Elasticsearch kind of deals with all that. So you don't really have to worry about it too much. And similarly here, which is all this lot, which is just all lowercase. Got another hash here, which is body text hash, which again we won't go into right now. We have some metadata fields. So, so what metadata is web pages have a lot of other information that you can't see in it, that is optional, that you don't see, and it's generally used by search engines to. It used to be traditionally used by search engines to help search engines identify what sort of news story it was. We're not using metadata right now, but at some stage we think we will. And the problem with metadata is everybody uses it differently. And gone are the days when Google really looks at metadata and decides what kind of news story it is. Well, part of the things that would like the search analytics team to look at, with the assistance of somebody like Matt Shaw as well, is what other metadata could we use that might be useful for making searches? So one of the things which we don't include in there, but perhaps would be metadata often includes the author of the news story, like the journalist who wrote it. That might be an interesting thing for us to use as part of kind of evaluating kind of the relevance of the story. There's these other special fields, which is when it was added to the index here, publication date, sort order, which is just a random number that's allocated to it. So within this, there's no other information. So we've got no other embedded arrays in here. So what it's saying, which I find astounding actually for this one, is it hasn't found any match stories for it, which I find difficult to believe, actually. Right, okay. That's badly. Let's look at this one. See if that's got any. Now in this one, we do have some match words here. So the key thing to is the we said oh, that's match keyword. That's the wrong thing. That's no, not in this one either. Here we've got the key thing which I'm looking for. So so this is an array called match search array. So what the poll has done here is matched searches. That we have these list of known searches where we can say, right, okay, we need to add, this is something that's going to be useful to so the apps have already searched for. So we need to send a notification for this as well as adding it to the index. So it's splitting out the various things. We've got there's a search category here, which is somebody said all sources, which is -1. This is really pissing me off actually, because I told Dave that he should have got rid of this. It's got a search keyword of the, which is shit. So we're in the process of getting rid of all these shitty little words. And I thought Dave had done it, and he hasn't. So we'll skip past this, but I've already flagged up there's been an issue. So here is a bet one here, which is Chelsea. So here we can see so it's soccer. Got the keywords as they were originally keyed in, because we need to display that on the device. We don't want to capitalize it on the device. And then we've got the push a notification string here, which is, so it begins with on the other thing I've forgotten about here on the publication string is we have so what Bubbler standard means is we have different profiles for different apps, and what those profiles do, amongst other things, they do a couple of things. is it's possible to block certain feeds based on profile. So one of the key elements of the apps is people can block or unblock feeds that they don't want. So I don't want to hear anything for Fox News, so I'll block it. One of the fundamental principles of where the apps work is the end user's in complete control. So there's certain, we all have them, certain kind of, we don't really want to hear anything from the Daily Mail or something like that. You can block the Daily Mail, and that's it. That's fine. But we also give the opportunity for influencers to say, do you know what? I really don't want Breitbart. I really don't want Fox News to be sent out for my apps. So rather than do a separate set of block feeds for every influencer, we bunch them together into profiles because most of them are going to be similar. So Bubbler standard is usual. That's nearly all of them are Bubbler standard. So if we've got exceptional ones like somebody, I think we've got another profile which is like called No Alt Right. So in other words, no alternative right-wing websites. An influencer may choose to say, I want these ones blocked. And usually, there'll be, there's other similar sort of websites that want the same things. So part of the push notification string is the profile there, the feed category name there, and then the uppercased the actual keywords, which is Chelsea. Yeah. So and you can see all of these here as well. So these are the things where that the feed items, these are the searches that's been matched against them. So the other interesting thing, I suppose, really, so that's really kind of is an awful lot of these stories are going to come in where they don't match any searches that we've got. Now we don't discard these; we still get included within feed items, and the reason for that is that people may search for something. When people search for something new, a brand new search, so you might search for a rare keyword like endometriosis. I always use that as the rare keyword that you might search for, and nobody searched for that before. So what we do is we have this notion of first search. So when you add a new search that's never been added before, what we do is we search the database for the newest stories about that particular keyword in that category. So what we're doing is building up a database of not necessarily new stories that we're going to publish out to the apps, but could be published and could also at some point be searched for. And it also, where it's going to be really useful is you'll know those stories exist when you're trying to do your more refined searches. So there's a load of stuff in there that's never been used. So I'd say about 90% of the feed items that's in there have never been sent to an app yet. Doesn't mean they're not useful. So we still have that database. So that's kind of there is a link that we have for the definition of the feed items in Confluence. The sort of, I'm sure we've got that somewhere, which I'll kind of pinch it all. But that's kind of roughly, that's going to be the ones that you're going to be. This is the main, index you're going to be looking at working on. So does that kind of all make sense to you?
Yeah.
I probably will to Stan because he's been doing this anyway for months, so we kind of at least learned anything new on this, to be honest. But certainly for Rachel and Eamon, yeah.
Yeah.
So Eamon, I'll ask you first. Is that explain things a bit more to you?
Yes, yeah, it does. Yeah, I mean, you have actually covered a bit of this with me before.
Yeah.
Which has helped. I mean, if this is the first time Rachel's seen this, she's probably thinking, "What?" But
yeah. So obviously, Rachel, you haven't seen this before, so it's going to be harder for you to take this in because it's all brand new. So you might need to reflect on it for a day or two, and perhaps say, kind of, or maybe we, we can have another chat about it, whatever it is, kind of anything you don't understand. If there's anything, I think the key thing you've got to go away and reflect on this, Rach, is say, is there anything really I fucking don't get this bit at all? You know, this, you know, kind of having thought about it and kind of, and then you need to come back and say, look, Steve, I don't get this at all. Something, you know, because these are all pretty basic things, particularly on kind of how it hangs together. You know, so so what's your current mood on it?
There's nothing that's, it's a lot, but there's nothing that's jumping out that I don't actually understand. I think if you send me this recording, that would be super helpful, and I can relook and see if there's anything, but there's nothing where I've gone, what?
Okay.
It'll fall into place more, Steve, I think,